The sound of horses' hooves echoed across the valley, quick and tense, breaking the fragile silence of dawn. The air carried a heavy weight, as if the land itself was holding its breath. A young woman knelt near the remains of a burned wagon, her voice trembling as she tried to soothe the frightened child pressed against her chest. The little girl's tiny hand clung tightly to her torn dress, and her wide eyes reflected both terror and hope. Suddenly, from the tree line, a figure emerged, tall, powerful, and cloaked in furs and feathers. The Lakota Chief had come with his warriors, bow drawn, ready to end what his people saw as another settler intrusion. But before he could release the arrow, the girl whispered through her tears, "She sounds like Mama." Her soft, innocent words sliced through the tension like a blade through smoke. The chief's grip faltered, his bow lowered. And in that moment, the course of 3 lives shifted forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the strength of the human spirit, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to The Gentle Truth. Your support helps us continue telling stories that touch hearts. The Lakota Chief stood still, his eyes narrowing as he studied the woman and the child. She was no threat, thin from hunger, her face smeared with soot, her dress torn from travel and attack. She had no weapon, only the strength in her voice as she sang softly to calm the girl, a melody so raw and tender that it cut through the chaos of the world. Something deep within him stirred, something he had long buried since the loss of his own wife. The child's words, simple, pure, had awakened it. He lowered his bow completely, stepping forward with the authority of a leader but the hesitation of a man remembering grief. The woman's heart raced. She knew she was at his mercy, her fate decided in an instant by the man towering before her. The girl, however, reached toward him with innocent trust, as though she could sense the father in him before he even spoke. He knelt, the leather of his attire creaking, and laid his bow on the earth as a sign. His warriors looked on in shock, exchanging uncertain glances, but none dared question his choice. He extended his hand, not to harm, but to offer, a gesture that said, "You are safe here." The days that followed were filled with quiet uncertainty. The Lakota camp was alive with the rhythm of survival, fires crackling, children laughing, women tending to meals, men sharpening weapons or preparing for hunts. Yet within this bustling life, the settler woman found herself set apart, watched with suspicion, whispered about when she passed. Some saw her as a danger, others as a burden. But the chief remained firm. He had taken her and the girl under his protection, and his word was law. Still, protection did not mean acceptance. The woman struggled to fit into a world that was not her own. She did not know the language, the customs, or the songs that floated over the evening fires. She often sat alone with the child, staring into the flames, her mind replaying the horrors that had brought her here. The raid on her wagon, the death of her kin, the long night of running through the woods until she collapsed. Yet in those flames she also saw glimmers of something she had not expected: life, resilience, even hope. The chief, though stern and quiet, began to notice her strength. She worked tirelessly, learning how to grind grain, how to mend clothing, how to tend the wounds of the injured. And each night, as the child fell asleep in her arms, the woman sang that same lullaby, the one that had stayed his hand. It echoed through the camp, soft and haunting, stirring memories of his lost wife. He found himself lingering near her tent, not out of suspicion, but because the sound gave him peace. But challenges loomed. One evening, a storm swept across the plains, fierce and unrelenting. The river swelled, threatening to drown the camp. In the chaos, the little girl slipped, nearly swept away by the current. It was the chief who plunged into the raging water, his strong arms pulling her to safety. When he placed her, shivering and crying, back into the woman's arms, something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, trust, a bond forged not in words, but in action. Over time, the child's laughter filled the camp, bridging gaps that language could not. She played with Lakota children, her innocence disarming even the harshest critics. The woman, though still foreign, began to be seen not as an enemy but as a mother, someone who had endured loss, yet still had love to give. And the chief, who had once carried only the weight of duty and loss, found himself looking at the woman not as a burden, but as a companion. The transformation was slow, fragile, and often met with resistance. There were whispers of betrayal, of weakness. Some accused him of being blinded by grief. Yet he stood firm, his voice steady as he declared that compassion was not weakness. He reminded his people that strength was not only in the bow or the hunt, but in the ability to protect life when it hung by a thread. As the seasons changed, so too did the hearts within the camp. The woman learned their songs, weaving her voice into their traditions. The chief taught her the ways of the land, showing her how to read the wind, how to find safe paths through the forest, how to listen to the silence between sounds. And the child, once broken by fear, blossomed in this new world, calling the chief not just protector, but father in her heart. Yet the outside world did not rest. One evening, a band of hostile settlers rode near the Lakota camp, searching for the very woman and child who had once fled their burning wagon. Tension erupted, warriors standing ready, bows drawn, while the woman trembled at the thought of being taken again. But the chief stood before her, his arms wide, his voice booming like thunder as he vowed they would not be harmed. His people, once divided, now rallied behind him. The settlers left, defeated not by arrows but by unity. The woman wept that night, holding her daughter close. For the first time in a long while, her tears were not of fear but of relief. She realized she had not just been given shelter, she had been given a family, a place where brokenness was healed, where second chances were real. The chief, watching her by the firelight, felt the same. What had begun as an act of mercy had grown into something far greater, a bond of love, of healing, of home, and so, under the endless sky, in a land that could be both cruel and kind, the three of them, chief, woman, and child, found a life stitched together not by blood, but by choice. A life born of a little girl's innocent words, of a man's moment of compassion, and of a woman's strength to keep singing even when the world tried to silence her. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to The Gentle Truth. And before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe love and compassion can bridge even the deepest divides?